Well, hello and welcome to my symposium or colloquium on the innate meliorative potential of the human mind. I would like to begin by giving you some sense of what this is going to be about and what sort of the scope of this project is. Um, you are going to hear me over the next 60 or so minutes trying to define consciousness and giving you a sense of how this subject has been defined across various disciplines. Those disciplines include the neurosciences, so the hard sciences, the philosophical viewpoints. I'm also going to talk a little bit about artistic perspectives, and so yeah, that's sort of the orientation of how this is going to be. This is going to come together. Um, so I will say a little bit more about what this is essentially about when I get to the foundational questions. But yeah, that's a good start. So, so first I would like to recognize all the various people that you see pictured here, a few others in addition, that have been instrumental in sort of allowing me to pass through the last couple of years. And prior to that, of course, my mother here is an important figure. I've sort of reconfigured my relationship with her over the past couple of years. As I passed into my adult phase of my life, I sort of reoriented and remythologized her and sort of retold her story in a number of ways. So she's definitely someone to be recognized. Of course, my fabulous and supportive spouse is to be recognized, and the people here in the Antioch community who have been supportive advisors and mentors and colleagues and coworkers. They all need to be recognized for their professionalism and their expertise for advisement and editorial work. Of course, specifically, Ormond Smythe needs to be recognized. He was a wonderful advisor when I was in the BA department. He's been a useful critic of a lot of my work. He's always been very open, and of course, Ned Farley has always been very observant and giving me feedback on chapters of this project as it's come together. So I would like to recognize him especially for his efforts. And of course, Beverly, the director and my supervisor over the past 9 months or so, has been a very good person and very instrumental and helpful. And I will miss all of you when I move on to the next phase in my life. And so I just wanted to recognize all of those people. I want to say a few words about the dedication of this project. So the main reason I chose to study something as convoluted and difficult to access and really study thoroughly as consciousness is that, you know, my developmental process of coming into being and reaching adulthood involved several difficulties. I had to arise from many difficult circumstances. My formative years were not the most pleasant, and it took a lot of effort to evolve from a naive boy to a functional man. And you know, when I was a teenager, I was very distracted by lots of psychic distress. And this individual, he was a friend for 12 years and very tragically passed away in 2006. And so a lot of what I try to do in the writing and try to do in this work is to talk about how the mind is naturally wired and capable of arising from any difficulty, any any sort of mental illness, any depressive disorder. In his case, it was severe social anxiety and perhaps mild autism and major depression, major bouts of depression. And I myself arose from from a period of addiction, period of drug addiction, and I was able to do that by sort of healing myself and really deep diving into deeper layers of my mind and fixing many things. And so I would like to dedicate all this work to him and to his family, and it was a great pleasure to do that and present a copy of this to him, to his surviving parents and siblings and sibling. So yeah. So regarding the personal element of this, so consciousness is in many ways synonymous with the idea of a psyche, and a psyche is more related to sort of the emotions that you experience and memories, and how emotions and memories are sort of interrelated. So there is certainly a personal element, and those of you that have that have read this work have seen a lot of that. You've seen me talk about sort of the potential to arise and to overcome and to get over a lot of difficulties. So there's a definite personal element to all of this, and that was sort of the motivation for choosing this topic. So I want to say a bit about the core driving questions, the fundamental queries that are foundational to this work. In the written piece, I focused primarily on, of course, there's a psychological theoretical lens that is, the primary lens you use to investigate the phenomena that you're investigating. This program that I'm graduating from, I call it it's the individualized, selfish intellectuals, non-clinical, choose your own adventure graduate school. So a lot of and I'll talk a little bit about the independent studies that I did, but primarily it was the written piece covered philosophy, covered a bit of neuroscience, and the primary psychological theory was existential thought. So you'll hear me going, sort of vacillating and going between those three areas over the next hour, hopefully in a cohesive way that is possible to follow and make sense of. So with respect to those three areas, I endeavored to sort of juxtapose three different disciplines by asking these questions. The first question was, how does one tap into our natural potential for construction of ontological security by directing our consciousness in a manner that promotes healing? The second question that I asked was, how did the varieties of arguments regarding the substance to which the mind reduces inform the core presuppositions about reality that generate existential anxiety? And I'll say a little bit more about existential anxiety and crises and those issues as I progress here. The third question was, how can models of consciousness and subconscious neural circuitry inform our natural capacity for happiness? So to what extent are we wired to be happy?
Is your internet working?
Yes, I'm actually recording right now. I'm in the middle of a recording. So cross-disciplinarity. There's a few semantic nuances and things that I use here. So prior to talking about how I was able to put together disciplines in a way that makes sense to answer the questions that I posed, I had to say a bit about the semantic difference. So the reason I had to use, and I'm using in this presentation, a cross-disciplinary approach using many disciplines is that, studying consciousness, it's a phenomenon that is far too complex to address with one single lens. So, so first I should define a discipline. So a discipline is a branch of learning or field of study characterized by a body of intersubjectively acceptable knowledge pertaining to well-defined realm of entities systematically established on the basis of a generally accepted principle with the help of methodical rules and principles. So that's a very formalized and technical way of saying that it's just a field of study that has its own criteria for knowledge production, and so I talk a little bit about what the criteria for knowledge production across these different areas are, and how can you create sort of a standardized scaffold to put these conclusions together to address these problems and these core questions that I proposed. So consciousness is something that is far too complex. It has it has various definitions. It involves potentially the material realm, the immaterial realm. It involves psyche and emotion. It involves all of the thoughts we are capable of thinking. It involves your memories of your life course and how memory interacts with your everyday life. It involves processing cascades. There's a huge and expansive area that is inclusive in consciousness study. So it was highly challenging to really zero in on one real area. So what I try to do is I try to talk about what elements of consciousness can you find in these different fields. I mean, what does that tell you about the human condition? There's this assertion that there's something similar about being human that is shared across all of humanity. There's a really great quote that goes, it's by Terence, and he says, I'm not going to say the Latin, but he essentially says, in English, I am human, therefore there is nothing human that I cannot understand. So, by virtue of being human, there's going to be this, this valid, universal experience of being human, and you're going to pass through a predictable timeline, and you're going to age and go through various crises, involving your personal identity and your career identity, and come to terms with your mortality and finding your talents, and that's really something that I try to work on here. And that's really an Antiochian principle. This idea that I'm not studying the mind in this way in a department, in this department, just so that I can learn to perform a job role effectively. There's this sort of integral idea that we are educating the whole person. And this involves 5 primary aspects of educating the whole person. So this involves physical, bodily, socio-ethical, instinctual, emotional, cognitive, pragmatic, vocational, religious, mystical, humanistic. So and consciousness, in a sense, has these different elements as well. So it has a physical aspect. It has an aspect that interacts with the world, or with the social world around you. There's a system of ethical principles. So that's sort of what that is about. So these are the 3 primary fields that I use in the written piece. In this presentation piece, I want to say a bit about some artistic elements as well. but